Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast,
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we're going to be discussing what is the ideal trip length for a trip to Walt Disney World. And in order to do that, we're going to kind of go through varying trip lengths, so like a 2-day trip, 4-day trip, a week-long trip, etc., and kind of talk through like what we think is realistic to do and kind of what's like a good itinerary in terms of, you know, do hotels matter? What do you think you're going to be able to ride? Like, should you do a lot of dining reservations, that sort of stuff? Kind of based on our experiences because we've done widely varying trip lengths. So kind of from what we learned to kind of help plan, like what is the ideal trip length for you?
Yeah, we've done pretty short trips. We haven't done any like really, really long ones, but
Not
I think that
longer than
a lot
week.
of,
I think maybe like 6 days is probably the max we've done.
And I think that like a lot of times when people plan for like longer, they're usually coming from further away than we are. So yeah, but we pretty much run the gamut here.
No, exactly. But before we get into that, I want to cover some Disney news of the week. So we got some information on the Disney Destiny, which is the next ship that's coming out after the Treasure. So the Treasure set sail December of this year. The Destiny set sail December of 2025.
And I love the artwork that was released on social media because I can't remember who the other character was.
Scar is very predominant in this.
Well, yeah, I was saying, I don't know who the other character was, but the one that stuck out to me
I
was
thought you
Scar.
forgot Scar. I thought you forgot him.
I was mentioning it,
was
but I
Edna
forgot
Mode.
Scar.
Edna Mode was the other one.
Edna Mode and Scar. I mean, like a great duo there. So very excited. Especially for them to do something that is villains themed, because maybe if it tests well,
the whole ship is heroes and villains. Mm-hmm. That's the theme, and it seems like they're going for animation. Like all of the artwork and everything that's come out of it has been animation. So not only that initial one did have Scar on it and Edna Mode, but then also kind of in the press release there was like these little like badges, and there was one Scar was on one of them. But like Hercules was on one. Now Black Panther was on one. But you could, Black Panther is a comic book and live action, so that's kind of where it doesn't fit the bill. But it seems like it is more based on animation. But we're getting a lot of details here, which I don't know why they're doing this before D23. We actually next week we're previewing D23, and we recorded it ahead of time. And I'm pretty sure I said I think we're going to get news on the Destiny at D23. So when you listen to that next week, I did not know about this news ahead of time, but it's just all part of a 3-day reveal starting July 30th. So they're going to reveal all of this stuff before D23 even happens, which I feel like it's kind of odd, but I don't know. Maybe they're trying to like get a good buzz going into D23.
Well, yeah, and I know that they before they have a new cruise ship, if you're like super high on their media list, I know they send out a box of
some people started getting that.
Yeah, so like I know some of the influencers that do reporting at least on Disney.
We must have just missed
Carly
the cutoff.
Wiesel, we must have just missed it.
Just missed the cutoff.
Yeah, But anyway, I know that some of them got their stuff, and I can't remember. I feel like Carly Wiesel, at least, I think, like, speculated what she thought the bar was, but I was just thinking, with Scar, how cool would an elephant graveyard bar be?
All you want is anything elephant graveyard. Every time Lion King comes up, it's an elephant graveyard attraction, an elephant graveyard bar.
I just think it would be so cool. Yeah. Like, you just do, like, the bones.
No, I think you have it. I think you call it the Lion's Den.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, we're workshopping. No bad ideas, I thought. But
yeah, like you do the bones and like grays and blacks, and then you have like green smoke and lighting effects and things. I think it would be really cool.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, what they kind of announce with this. I believe bookings for this go on sale in August. So I think pretty soon. So I think they're going to announce this, and pretty shortly after you can book for this. Again, the first voyage is going to be December of 2025. So we're still a ways away. But I do like that it's, again, seems to be animation. It seems to be a different style. Heroes and villains is interesting. You could have some interesting shows on board, all that sort of stuff. So
this a sister ship with the Wish, or is this different?
So it's the third. It's the third ship. So it was the Wish, the Treasure, and the Destiny. So this is the third ship that Disney had ordered. Now, like we talked about a few weeks ago, Tokyo Disney has ordered a Wish class ship. So that'll be the fourth one. But Disney's announced kind of plan was these three. Okay. So I don't think they have any planned outside that. Then the Adventure was one they purchased kind of out of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So it's a huge ship that they're kind of doing. So I do still think we'll get some information on that as well on D23. So over at Disneyland in the parks, a couple things. They announced that Haunted Mansion Holiday will be coming back, which I don't know if we officially knew that they were going to bring back Haunted Mansion Holiday, but I think we kind of talked about that probably made sense because it closed after Haunted Mansion Holiday last year. And then they just didn't want to take everything out and put it back in again because they've been working on the queue and everything. But it is opening July 29th. So I guess Halloween starts in July now at Disneyland. So that's pretty cool because we really enjoyed that. It's great. If you have not gone and you've gotten to see it, it really does live up to the hype in terms of like a holiday overlay.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so fun. And again, it is just, I don't know, like I'm trying to think. I feel like it's more appealing to your wider Disney audience. I feel like as a person that really loves Disney, I love Haunted Mansion because I know like all of the history and everything behind it, but it is just really well done and equally as good, I think, with the Haunted Mansion. So yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, and even if you aren't a huge like Nightmare Before Christmas fan, like we've seen the movie. I wouldn't consider myself like a super fan or anything like that. You enjoy it. Like there's enough of like the popular characters that you know that you can kind of have those touch points. I'm sure there's a lot more Easter eggs that we missed, not being again super fans of the movie. But it does a good mix of, hey, if you're familiar with this movie, you're gonna have fun. If you like Haunted Mansion, you'll still have fun. That sort of thing.
It does, I think, what IP in the parks can do, which is it drives your interest. So I think we did that prior to Halloween this year, right? Yeah, we went to see the Haunted Mansion Holiday.
No, it was after Halloween. Really? It was in January when we were there for the race.
Oh, okay.
So again, it changed over and they kind of just kept it through January, knowing that it was going to close because of the key renovations and everything. So that's why we got to see it.
Well, I was going to say, because we watched that on when the trick or treaters were going around.
Yeah, we watched it in Halloween.
I think that's going to be our new tradition because I think it is a really good movie, and I never watched it as a child. I only saw it whenever I started working, and my students were like, "Hey, we should watch this movie," and I'm like, "I've never seen it."
Yeah, and it's good because it works for Halloween and Christmas. So that's why they can kind of keep it for so long, and July too. Now it's almost a patriotic Nightmare Before Christmas too. So, and then the last thing I want to mention, over at Disneyland, Deadpool and Wolverine have showed up in Avengers Campus, and Disney announced this earlier in the week that they were going to be showing up for a limited time. Who knows how long that means? It seems to be wildly popular. So I was expecting them to be there as like meet and greet characters, which it seems like that kind of is like whenever they have a movie, that character is usually just kind of like walking around for photos. They have Deadpool completely taking over. So there's a story time with Deadpool. That seems to be a regular show where he puts a Deadpool spin on classic Disney fairy tales. So he's done Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella. That's like right outside the Hyperion Theater. But then I also saw he showed up at the Guardians of the Galaxy dance off. He was over there with Peter Quill. I also saw a video of him just riding a unicorn through Avengers Campus with thousands of people following him around. Whoever they got to play Deadpool, phenomenal at it. Really well done with the story time. Like, he has jokes. He kind of has that character, but obviously it is a little bit more family friendly because it is within a Disney park. But making fun of Marvel, making fun of Disney, all that sort of stuff. So it seems really good. It seems popular. Josh D'Amaro was actually there in one of the videos. Like, people spotted him watching this. So hopefully they see it's doing well. One thing I immediately thought was, the Doctor Strange show was canceled. And so that is kind of open. Not spoilers for Deadpool. I think in the trailers, it's all pretty common that he's working with the TVA. So I think potentially you could repurpose the Sanctum as some sort of TVA portal and just have Deadpool come out and do his story time, or like you could have different shows. Like he could more easily change. I think that was the thing with the Doctor Strange show. It was like, it's been 2 years. He's doing the exact same thing. They need to retool it. But he seems super popular. It made me think of it watching this and how he, is kind of aware of everything that's happening. Deadpool is basically Marvel's version of the genie. And I think that's why he's so popular. Like the Genie works well kind of in all mediums, and it seems like Deadpool works well movies, in the parks. Like I think they have a hit, and I think they need to figure out a way to keep Deadpool in the parks either permanently or showing up more often to kind of keep people excited.
Yeah, it is really interesting. So again, like we're not going to give any spoilers, but we went to see the movie, and I think that he is like very quickly skyrocketed to the top of my favorite Marvel like
Oh yeah, I need
heroes.
to change my top character list because he's like Genie. So Genie's, a couple weeks ago we did our top 5 characters. I think Alan Tudyk's getting knocked off the list, and I think Deadpool's getting bumped up there because I thought of that. I was like, he's basically Genie in Marvel.
And I will say, like, I don't think he's like Robin Williams Genie, but he's like some of the other references to Genie, like when we went to see on The Wish, we talked about this, where he was very like referential to
Genie
what was
aware.
going on in the world, and almost like referential to the fact that he works for Disney and like those kinds of things.
And that's why that character works in all of those memes, because Genie's aware of what's going on, and Deadpool's kind of the same way.
Yeah.
And it breathes a new life into it, and having him in the parks. Again, just seeing him just riding a unicorn down the middle of the thing. I'm gonna have to watch this one. It's hilarious. The only thing I haven't seen him interact with the Dora Milaje.
Or Spider-Man. Has he done anything with Spider-Man?
I haven't seen with Spider-Man. What would be really funny is because it wouldn't be that hard. You just put a new suit on that animatronic. Like have Deadpool do the Spider-Man show.
Oh, geez.
Or like have him show up in some other stuff. That's the thing. I think they can do so much so quickly with him. And again, you can kind of keep things interesting. And he could be in the stunt show. Like he could almost show up anywhere. And I think that's kind of what you want people to think, because it gets people coming back to the parks if you don't know where he's going to be.
Yeah. And
again, it's been a while since I've seen video or I've seen Avengers Campus kind of that electric, because the characters are what drive that part of the park, and having a character like that, it seemed like it really got people excited.
Yeah, I hope that he sticks around for a little bit longer once they see how popular he is, because again, like after seeing, you told me about it like this morning, and I was like, I'm not going to watch any of these videos. I'm really not that interested. I know they're going to get rid of it. I mean, maybe eventually I'll see it. And then we saw the movie, and now I'm like, oh dude, I want to.
Josh was there.
Yeah. I want to.
Hopefully he was taking notes.
Yeah.
Hopefully he was taking everybody was there with their cameras out.
Right.
It was great. So yeah, so a lot of fun. So I don't know how long he's going to be there. Again, it said limited time. D23 is coming up in a couple of weeks. You would think they would keep him around that long because they're having a D23 day in the parks. Like there's going to be a lot of people there. You would think those people would kind of want to see him. But who knows? So let's get into our main topic here. What is the ideal trip length for a trip to Disney? And we're going to talk Walt Disney World, and kind of to answer this question, we're going to go through some like sample itineraries for trips of varying lengths. So we have gone to Walt Disney World quite frequently, and we've done everything from like a 2-day weekend trip up to a week there. So we've definitely not done. I know some international guests, you're flying internationally, you want to make a long vacation out of it. I think a lot of people from like Europe, UK, they'll come for 10 days, 14 days, sometimes 2 weeks. We've definitely never done anything like that.
No.
I think that like 6 to 7 days, probably the max, we've gone. So kind of going through like, what should you, think about? Like, what is it possible to do during a trip of 2 days versus 5 days versus 7 days? What are some of like kind of our ideas and recommendations to help you build like your ideal trip? So that way you can kind of figure out like, all right, that sounds good for me. Cause it's the other part of it is too, is like, how much does it cost? The longer you're there, the more you're spending on hotels, on food. Ticket prices obviously get cheaper, just the way Disney does it per day. But everything else is still very expensive.
Right.
And there definitely are some, trade-offs that we'll get into. The longer you stay, you may not need, I'm just called a Genie Plus. You may not need the Lightning Lane.
It's called something. Yeah, it's called something. I guess we're supposed to be the source of that, but
who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
But you may be able to save some money there. So like there are some trade-offs in that as well. So let's get into this. So starting with, I think the shortest trip length of somebody that's not a local, and that's 2 days. And we have done that. So I want to preface this by saying I would not recommend this. It was like a whirlwind, and I think it was too much in too short a time period.
Right. Yeah, it was a lot in those couple days. I think it was we flew down on a Friday night after work, and then we went over the weekend for Saturday, ran a race on Sunday, and then left pretty late in the day on Sunday, probably like 6, 7 o'clock flight. So wouldn't recommend it because by the time, like, I feel like for a trip, you need a few days just to kind of like settle into it. So I think that by the time we were kind of settled in, it was time to turn around and go back home already.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost so quick that you came back and you didn't feel refreshed like you typically do on vacation because you
Yeah.
packed so much in. I mean, it was like a quick
And
weekend. We took no days off. Like you said,
yeah,
we left
and
Friday. We were back to work on Monday.
so it was almost like we had an extended work week. I mean, not that,
Yeah.
going to Disney is working, but because you're not
It's a lot. You're
resting,
traveling,
it was a
you're
lot.
flying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a
yeah.
lot on us.
So if you want to do this, again, I would not necessarily recommend this. If you're a local, obviously going one day, going a weekend, like I think that makes a lot more sense because you can drive, whatever. But if you do want to do this and you're flying in, definitely recommend, either flying in like super early the first day or like the evening the night before if you can't, do like 3 days and then trying to leave as late as possible the second day so that you can get at least 2 full days. Because if you're going for 2 days and your flight home leaves in the afternoon, you're basically getting a day at the parks. That's really
Yeah.
not worth it. Like you at least have to try to get 2 full days. I also think at this point, hotels don't matter in terms of amenities, but location would, because you're going to save a lot of time if you're staying at the boardwalk and you can walk to Epcot and Hollywood Studios because you're not on the buses as much, or staying at one of the Magic Kingdom resorts because you can get to Magic Kingdom and Epcot a lot quicker, which is going to help you maximize as much of that 2 days as you have.
Right. Another thing that I think we just kind of to backtrack a second, we have the luxury of living on the East Coast. So even though a 2-day trip is,
Oh, it's impossible if you're West Coast.
but like if you're driving or if you're flying 5, 6 hours across country, no way I would try to pull off a 2-day trip. Now you can maybe make Disneyland work and do that over there, but I mean, it's only possible for us because the flight's, a couple hours long, and so it's not really that bad of a flight.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Like I said, we're talking more specifically Walt Disney World just because that's where we have the most experience. But over at Disneyland, I think 2 days, 3 days is probably the ideal trip length over there because there's only 2 parks, because everything's so close. It is so easy to park hop and go back and forth. You can get basically everything you want to do done. You could get it done in 2 days, but if you had 3 days for sure, I think you're going to have a pretty satisfactory trip. Whereas at Walt Disney World, again, if you're going 2 days, the other thing you have to keep in mind is you're not going to all 4 parks.
Yeah.
Like you need to basically pick ideally 2 parks and to spend 1 day at each park. Or if you do park hop, maybe you can get 3. Some other ways to kind of save time, because again, it's all about time management when you're going for that short of time period. So again, hotel location matters if you can get closer to the parks. Also, if you can't, use things like Uber or the minivan, something that you're not waiting in line for Disney buses, something more consistent, is going to save you a lot of time. I do think, though, you don't necessarily need the Lightning Lane multi-pass. Potentially if it's a super crowded time, but I don't think you necessarily want to go, if you're only going for a couple of days, at a high crowd time. You probably want to go at a little bit lower crowd. I think, though, what may make sense is if you save some of that money and you go when there's like an after hours event. Now, I think that's a good way to make a 2-day trip a little bit more worth it, because if you can go and spend the extra money on an after hours event, so maybe you don't spend the extra money on park hopping or on Lightning Lane, go to an after hours event because there's a lot less crowds, and that's going to be a potential way to get a third park in and to get a lot of attractions in that you wouldn't normally get just going to the park during the day.
Right. And I think, the reason why we did it before was we ran a race. So that for us was worth it because it was, it was something that we wanted to participate in. And also running the particularly the Run Disney World races, I think it is really cool because you get to run on the roads that you're driving the buses on and then go through the parks. You get to see behind the scenes and see characters. So it's a different type of experience, and sort of like the after hours events, you're getting to see and do things that you don't typically get to see and do.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I think if you go down for a party or just an after, like if you tack it on with something else, it makes it
you can kind of weigh it and say this is worth it.
I was going to say you can kind of convince yourself more
yeah.
that it was worth going through there. In terms of like dining, I would definitely skip dining reservations because I don't think you should really plan that you're going to have table service or something because that's just going to take up so much time. Again, if you're only there for 2 days, it is all about like time maximization. So I think, doing a dining reservation, doing something where you're going to spend an hour and a half eating, that's going to take up a huge chunk of time.
Yeah. But again, kind of just conversely, if you are doing some sort of event, an after hours event or a race, and that's the reason why you're going, then maybe you're like, we're going to make this trip just about going and doing things that we haven't done yet. And say you've never eaten at, say, Boma, and you want to go do that. You want to take a day, and maybe you don't even want to go to a park. I mean, you could save a ticket price and only go one day. So, I mean, it kind of just depends, but this is definitely not a trip length for somebody that's like, this is my one Disney trip, or
right.
Like it is a, hey, this is a supplement. Hey, I want to go down to do something different, but I'm a pretty frequent park goer.
So moving up, I think the next kind of length that you get into is like the 3 to 4 day trip. So basically a long weekend here. I think a lot of what we said for the 2-day trip is the same. So I think you want to look at ways to maximize your time in the parks. So if you can stay at a hotel that is close to one or multiple parks, again, just minimizing the amount of time you're spending on Disney buses. I do think here park hopping probably makes more sense because even at 3 days, I think you could get all 4 parks in because, most likely you have your probably 2 favorite parks, and then you probably consider a 3rd and 4th park kind of half days. You could spend 1 day at 2 parks, and then split the 3rd day between the other 2, or 4 days for sure. You can definitely get to all parks. So I do think park hopping comes into effect. Lightning Lane, and I think this is definitely a personal opinion on it, where I'm still not sure Lightning Lane is really needed as much as people think it is, or as much as people use it. I definitely think it is very park specific. I think a park like Epcot or Animal Kingdom, I don't really think it's worth it just because there's not a lot of attractions there. But something like Magic Kingdom, it definitely makes more sense. So I think that's going to kind of come down to personal preference, what the crowds look like. I think the individual Lightning Lanes, like if you want to ride Tron or Cosmic Rewind, something like that may make more sense. But I don't necessarily think, even at like 3 to 4 days, I think you could probably do pretty much everything you want to do and accomplish without buying the multi-pass Lightning Lane, at least for more than 1 day. Maybe you get it for 1 day, but I don't think you really need it for more than that.
And I'd say that this 3 to 4 day trip length is this is more of our bread and butter. I think we're hitting around 3, 4, 5 days. I think a lot of times when we do tend to go. And so that is, I think, when you can also make some dining reservations, it makes more sense. You're moving throughout the different parks. You might be going to Magic Kingdom and you're like, oh, okay, well, I want to eat breakfast over at Ohana. And so you can kind of make that, like, schedule that in. It just makes more sense at that trip length. Or you could do something like schedule a breakfast, like the character breakfast over at Topolino's, then take the Skyliner from the Riviera over to one of the parks. So it really is, it's a good trip length to start exploring some of those dining options. And again, I think that probably most of the people who listen to this podcast know, but Disney has great food if you know where to find it. So always make sure you look in the different places. We haven't come anywhere near trying all of the restaurants. Yeah.
Probably 3-4 weeks ago about the best places to eat at Walt Disney World. A couple years ago, we did the best places to eat at Disneyland. So definitely go back and check out those episodes if you're looking for dining reservations. Because you're right, there's a lot of places out there, but there are a lot of restaurants at Walt Disney World, especially. And so it is very easy to
get overwhelmed.
Well, to get overwhelmed, but to just miss and not know they exist. Because there are so many out there.
And again, like if you have a special diet, they're really good over at Walt Disney World for tailoring to if you're a vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free. I've been with or been that person multiple times, and they do such a great job of tailoring the menu to suit you. And sometimes they give you food that's even better than everybody else gets.
Well,
So
probably because it's fresh. It's made fresh.
Yeah.
It is very
I'm
good.
I'm still like kind of like next time, like I shouldn't do this, but like I still swear those Mickey waffles were better, the gluten-free ones, than the regular ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of their food that is, when you were eating gluten-free, a lot of the stuff, it tasted better. Like, I almost thought, like, there's no way this is the gluten-free option. Because you're so used to, like, gluten-free, that sort of stuff, like, not being as flavorful.
Yeah.
But Disney does a great job. I think one thing with dining reservations, so you mentioned, like, definitely booking some for, like, a table service, character meal, something like that. I do say, like, don't overbook yourself, though. Again, on 3 to 4 days, like, you might think, and again, Disney is great at this. They have more stuff than you could ever do, and you're always going to leave thinking, oh, I didn't do X, Y, and Z. I didn't go eat here. I didn't ride that. That's how they get you to come back.
Yeah, you're never going to do it all.
Yeah, so don't go into it thinking, oh, I want to eat at 6 different restaurants. I'm going to book a lunch and dinner every single day, because you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to get from the parks to the dining reservations, because maybe some of them are at hotels, some are at parks, bouncing around, and you're going to be spending a lot of time eating at these places. And if that's really what you want to do, like if you're there just for the food, I'd say go for it. But I don't think everybody going is there just for the food. They want to spend time in the park, see the parade, see the characters. So be careful not to overbook yourself with that.
You know what's funny? I was just thinking about this while you were talking, that I think that earlier on in our relationship, I used to be like, I have to like do everything. And I feel like maybe going like Disney World trips has kind of cured that a little bit.
You physically can't
do it. And I feel like it's almost, maybe it's just part of me getting older and settling down and not being as, like, I have to do everything. But like, I do feel like now when we vacation somewhere that maybe isn't Walt Disney World,
we're just old and tired now, so we're just like, we're just happy.
Speak for yourself.
We're just happy to like not be working.
I still need to be run like a dog.
That's what it is. When you're young and you're not working yet, like you're still in school or like you're just starting working, like you're not tired of, like you're like, oh, I want to do this all. And then like after you've just been in the workforce for years, you're just like, I just want to sit and do nothing, because 9 to 5 I work.
So kids, take it easy on your parents. They're tired.
Yeah.
And they might have had a hard day, and then they're coming home and they're cooking you dinner too. So
words of wisdom there.
Exactly.
But I do want to mention one other thing with dining reservations. So again, kind of thinking about planning your itinerary, planning your dining reservations. I think some tips here are plan things early morning. Like I think breakfasts are a great idea. Like you mentioned Ohana, you mentioned Topolino's. Do that before the park opens, because then, like you mentioned, if you go to Topolino's, you can take the Skyliner to Hollywood Studios or Epcot. So do that on those days so you can get breakfast in before the park even opens, so you're not missing out time there. Or Ohana before Magic Kingdom opens. I think the other good tip is, if you want to go to some place like Oga's Cantina, you can get reservations basically right at the end of the night of Hollywood Studios. And so you're actually there sometimes past park closing, because, you have a half an hour, 45 minutes to spend at Oga's. So, let's say the park closes at 9. If you get a reservation right around 9, you can basically have a whole day in the parks and still get that. Now, you're not necessarily dining at Oga's, but you can still get that experience, still get the drink at Oga's, and it's not cutting into any park time. You're not really missing anything. So I think those are some little tips to think about, especially on shorter trips, to try to maximize your park time and still get dining reservations that you want.
And those people who get those late Oga's reservations, I think, are also some of the people that get the really good nighttime, uncrowded shots of Galaxy's Edge.
Because you come out of there and the
there's
park's
nobody.
Closed. They're starting to sweep. I think the cast members, they'll let you stop and take some photos if you're being there for a long time.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're like,
obviously.
all right, come on, you gotta go.
Be mindful of people and know that they want to go home too.
But if you kind of slowly walk out and take a few photos, they're not going to stop you. So those are some ways to kind of, again, just some little tips that people may not think about, because it's not something I don't know that I've really thought about until I saw people taking photos at Hollywood Studios, and they're like, nobody's here. It's like, well, how do you do that? Well, you book right at the end of the day. Or, I think even the one time, it was either right when Animal Kingdom opened, or it might have even been a little bit before Animal Kingdom opened, but we did a character breakfast at Tusker House. And it was very early in the day, and it might have been before the park opened, and they'll let you, they obviously let you in to eat breakfast, and then basically you're done right as park opens shortly after. So again, you're already in the parks. You're not really missing much time of that park day.
And I believe also when we did the Keys to the Kingdom tour, we were like one of the first tours. And so we were behind this. I mean, we were in Magic Kingdom before Magic Kingdom opened. So I believe, I think there were certain things we weren't allowed to take pictures of. But I think also when there was nobody around.
Well, it was before the park opened, because we were in some areas while they were still preparing the park.
Right.
So
it wasn't ready for show yet.
Technically backstage. Yeah. So you can take photos.
But they did. I mean, obviously, opening hours happen, but people can't just poof right into the park. So you can get some photos sometimes. You're not going to be in front of the castle, but that's another way you can get.
Yeah, you're not riding anything. If you're doing the Keys to the Kingdom tour, that's like a 5-hour tour. So even if you do it like right before park opens, it's not like you can take advantage of there not being crowds in there.
That's true.
Being in the park, like you could it for a breakfast. Like if you can get a breakfast inside a park right around when the park opens, you can potentially get in there before some of the crowds. So, all right. So moving on to a 5 or 6 day, kind of 5-6 day itinerary here. So I think this is when hotels start to matter in terms of amenities. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about hotels in terms of location. I think location of the hotel always matters. It's like real estate, location. That's always important. But I think when you start to get at the 5-6+ day trip, so even going past that, the amenities of the hotel start to matter more, because when you're going that long, I think it's a smart idea to build in a hotel day, to build in a rest day at the pool, to build in a day maybe at Disney Springs. So I think that's when you want to start looking at, okay, what restaurants are at my hotel? What does the pool look like? Like what is there to do at the hotel? So the All-Stars are great, but they don't necessarily have a lot of food options. They just have the food court. So if you're spending, a day at the hotel, that might not be the place you want to spend it at. You may want to look more at like the moderate or the deluxes if possible.
But again, I mean, there's ways if you were staying at All Stars that you could make that work, where you could say, yeah, all right, I'm going to make today all about, and we've actually talked about doing this before, but we haven't, going to tour the different hotels and eating at the different ones. So it doesn't really matter where you're staying if you're planning on doing that.
But you can't use the pools.
Yeah.
So you can't really use the amenities. You could go eat at the restaurants for sure, but if you want to spend a pool day, you can't go to another hotel and use their pool. You have to stay at your hotel. So you're right. You can go eat at the restaurants, but you can't use the amenities at those other hotels, only at your kind of home hotel. So I think that's when you need to start thinking about, I think, again, less than 5 days, I don't think you really need to worry about what amenities the hotels have, because I think you're not going to be spending a lot of time there. But I think 5-6 days, and I think it's a smart idea too, to build in a rest day. Again, whether it's not the hotel, maybe it's Disney Springs, but it's sometimes good to kind of decompress from the crowds, from what you're doing. Again, going to the Lightning Lane, the multi-pass now, I really think if you're going 5+ days, I think you can skip it, because I think you're going to have the opportunity, especially if you park hop and you can move around to the parks, you're going to get to every park at least once. The park that you maybe didn't get all of the attractions or all of the shows in that you wanted to do the first day, you're going to have the opportunity to park hop back there, go there a second day. And I think if you have 2 days at any given park, a day and a half at any given park, I think you can pretty much do 80 to 90% of what you want to do. Yes, you're going to be waiting in line longer, but I think using things like staying on site and getting in a half an hour early, if Disney has the after hours for deluxe hotel guests, if you can afford to stay at a deluxe hotel and you get the extra 2 hours at the end of the day, or doing, like we talked about, if you go down to a party, an after hours event, obviously you can get more in those times, but that half an hour in the morning, you can get a lot of attractions in. Even at a place like the Magic Kingdom, we've done 3 or 4 attractions in that first 30 minutes before it opens to everybody else. So I think going, for an extended length and being able to revisit the parks you like multiple times, I really don't think it's necessary to pay extra for the Lightning Lane.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then also just kind of adding on top of that, this is also a good trip length if you wanted to do one of the kind of behind the scenes tours. Disney offers a lot of these extra experiences. So like behind the scenes is over in the Land Pavilion in Epcot, and you can go behind the scenes of Living with the Land.
Yeah,
Or
and I think that's a good one because it's a shorter tour.
It
like,
is.
I think if you're going for the 5-6 days, I think if you're going to do a tour, it's probably a good idea to do a shorter tour. Like we talked about Keys of the Kingdom, that's taking up half your day. That might be a little bit much cutting into, if you're only going to the parks for 4 days, because again, maybe you factored in a rest day. But I think these shorter tours, like you said, behind the scenes is a good example.
Yeah, there's many of those different tours. We actually did an episode 292. So go back, check that one out.
Yeah, we actually ranked all of them.
Yeah,
there.
so we did all the ones that they had at the time. So it was a good episode. It was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, I mean,
I think I added a few to our
list. A lot
list.
of the other like shorter ones, like you mentioned, behind the scenes, you can go. There's a lot of Animal Kingdom. You can go see the rhinos. There's ones with the elephants. So there's a lot of options in terms of tours. Yeah, definitely go check out our episode kind of for the ranking of that. And then I think in terms of your dining, I think booking 2 to 3 either character meals, table service meals. That's probably a good number at a 5 to 6 day trip length. Because again, I don't think you want to book multiple dining reservations in a day. I don't even know that you necessarily need to book one every single day, because I think this also comes down to kind of like the cost benefit analysis too. I mean, character meals are $60+ a person.
Yeah.
Table service meals are very expensive. So it's kind of that balance of, do you want to spend that much every day on food versus, kind of the enjoyment of it. So I think if you did one every other day, I think you're going to get the enjoyment, but also save a little bit of money that way.
This is actually one of the trip lengths that I think would benefit from doing like an Instacart or like the Amazon. I know that we've seen people get like Amazon deliver food to the
point.
hotel.
Yeah.
So if you're staying for that length of time and you want to, hey, I don't want to eat breakfast in the park, I'm going to order some food so that we can make a bigger breakfast, and then we don't have to eat. We can eat maybe a snack at lunchtime and go for a big dinner.
You can even pack sandwiches and take the food in the parks.
Right, because you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a way that you can kind of save on your trip. I mean, honestly, that works for any of the trip lengths, but I feel like it starts to become a little bit more beneficial, especially if you're on your first day. You're like, okay, let's make sure that we get this like grocery order in. Because like a lot of times we'll go down to like the little cafes and we'll buy bananas for breakfast so that we have something to eat as soon as we wake up, because we're not going to
for
a
races.
Character.
It's usually when we're going for races when you're up before they're even serving food. So you kind of have to have something to eat. Yeah.
Right. And
so you buy a little bit more food the day before, so you kind of have that going forward.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like ordering some groceries and having something, that's a good idea. And then again, that maybe you save some money so you can afford to do an extra character breakfast or something like that. So all right, so moving on to 10 days, which I think is probably the max anybody's really going, the max anybody probably could go. I can't imagine going longer. I mean, I can't imagine going longer than a week. I think that would be a lot to be at Disney World for a week. I think 10 days would definitely be the max that I would ever want to do.
I feel like if you get to past about like 6 or 7, then you're doing a split stay with Universal. I think
that's
sense to me.
I think that's 100%. So I think for kind of this itinerary, and if you're thinking about a 10-day trip, I think a split stay just at Disney, going between 2 different hotels just to kind of change it up midway through. You get some different amenities that way, because again, you're maybe building in 2 pool days, 2 kind of relaxed days. You can see a couple different places, but I think the Disney Universal definitely makes a lot of sense, where you're at Disney for 6 or 7 days and then you're at Universal for 3 or 4 days, kind of breaking it up. I think you could even throw in a cruise. I think you could even look at a 6 or 7 day Disney trip and then a 3-day cruise, on the Wish as well. Something to kind of break it up in there, because I think 10 days just at the parks is probably a little bit much.
I could see people doing this, especially once Epic Universe opens, or even doing the opposite of going to Universal for their Universal trip and then popping over to Disney at the end
For a few days.
Yeah. But another thing that I was just thinking about, and I forgot it, and now I remember it, is that if you're doing one of those split stays as well, I really love Animal Kingdom Lodge. We've never stayed there, but the reason why we didn't buy like DVC or anything is Animal Kingdom Lodge is kind of like, it's not really near anything else. So that would actually be a really great hotel if you're like, oh, I really want to go visit there, like, because they have an extra little savannah area. They have a couple different pools. Like it's really cool. They have great dining. So that would be a great one if you were doing a split stay and you wanted to go and stay there for one of your days that you're not going to be going anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when you get to this trip length, you have to start thinking about what is there to do that's not in the parks or Disney Springs, because again, there's only so much time you can spend in the parks. If you're going to the parks every day for 10 days, I think that's too much. You're going to do everything. I think you're going to get burned out. But that's a good point. So thinking about, oh yeah, let me spend some time. And again, you don't even necessarily have to stay there, but you can go over to Animal Kingdom Lodge. You could spend a day. I'm just going to go around and tour all of the hotels and resorts just to see what things I like. I think looking at some of the other stuff that Disney offers that I think a lot of people overlook or don't do because they are so busy at the parks. There's the water parks. I think a lot of people don't visit the water parks as much. There's even things like mini golf. Like they have 2 mini golf courses there that I don't know that a lot of people visit because it's not like they're necessarily super easy to get to. And you're so busy with going to the parks, you're not going to want to spend that time doing that. But if you're there for 10 days and you build in a couple rest days, you could go do the mini golf. You could go do some of this other stuff.
Right. And I know that Disney's trying to encourage people to use those water parks. I think that they just added like an incentive.
Well, 2025, the day you arrive, you can go to the water park for free that day.
Yeah. So I know that they're trying to drive people to the water parks a little bit more. And we don't go often, but we have been to them and they're nice. Like I know a lot of people aren't water park people, but I enjoyed it.
Especially in Florida. If it's hot, if you're going in the summer or basically any day throughout the year, it's nice to go to the water park. I mean, the same thing with mini golf. If you buy a vacation package from Disney, so hotel and ticket package, you get those like magical extras. And one of them is a free mini golf round. Yeah. That's what we did it one time because it was like our last day and we were flying back to the airport. We didn't have a ton of time. So we went over and used our coupon to get a free round of mini golf. So those are some things to keep in mind. In terms of tickets, I think if you're going for this long, an annual pass may make sense. Now, we did an episode on this a couple months ago about, is an annual pass worth it? You know, what's kind of the payback period on it? And in that we did say, hey, at 10 days, if you're going for one 10-day trip, it's probably still not worth it because of how Disney, the price per day gets cheaper as you go down. Some people did reach out kind of after, one of our listeners and said, what they've done and what they've known people to do is just have one person in the family get the annual pass because then you get the discounts on the food and the merchandise and the hotels. Because like we talked about, if you're going for 7 or 10 days, it's actually still cheaper to buy the tickets from Disney, but the annual pass does come with some additional incentive. So that is one way around it. Never thought about that when we were prepping for that episode. But like if one of us had the annual pass, we could still get all the discounts. The other person could still just pay for their tickets normally if we weren't going enough to kind of make the annual pass worth it for both of us. Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind too, where if you are doing a 10-day trip, it may make sense to have one family member buy an annual pass, knowing you may not fully get your money back just on ticket sales, but being there that long. But if you're savvy
about what all the different discounts are, and you know where you're going to...
If you're there for 10 days and you're eating a lot of sit-down meals, character meals, and you can save on those, you can save on merch, save on hotels. Especially if you're in a big group. I mean, it would probably... Oh, man, that is some really good mathing right there. Yeah. I think some other things like we talked about with the tours, I think doing a longer tour makes sense. So like the Keys to the Kingdom tour, because again, something like that, or the Wild Africa Trek, where they are half-day tours, you can more easily fit it in because you're not necessarily missing out on the parks as much.
And by the way, just because we're recommending them for longer trips, we did both of those, I think, on a little bit of a shorter trip. I think maybe a 5-day. I think it was around those. So
this
is just like kind of a recommendation. This isn't like, don't do this if you're doing a 2-day trip. Hey, if this is what you want to do on your 2-day trip, then have at it. But yeah, like this, this amount of time, you are going to probably find yourself getting to the point where you're like, I'm kind of like, I don't want to say I'm over it, but like, you know, you're in the parks and they're very crowded and there's like a certain level of stress that comes with that unless you're not affected by that. But I feel like most people kind of don't love crowds. So this is like this is a cool way to sort of pull yourself out of that. You're in a smaller group. Even though you're going to be probably moving throughout the parks for some of the tours, you're still going to have respites away from the people or like little areas like partitioned off from the crowds.
No, and you're right. And again, kind of like we said at the beginning of the episode, like these are recommendations, kind of samples of what you could do realistically on various trips. Like we kind of mentioned at the beginning, hey, if you're all about the Disney food, if you're a foodie and you just want to spend your 2 or 3 days eating at all the restaurants you haven't tried yet, go for it. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think what we're coming from is people probably are going to want to mix. They're going to want to go to the parks. They're going to want food. And it is kind of overwhelming when you're planning it because you have so many options. And it's like, okay, what can I realistically do if I go for 3 days or if I go for 5 days or 6 days? Because you do have to plan of, you know, what does this cost? How much time can I get off of work? You know, how can I make this fit? And so you kind of have to think about that. But you're right. I mean, if you want to do the Keys to the Kingdom tour because that's like high on your priority list and you're only going for a couple of days, do it.
Yeah, just know that you're not going to be riding a, you know, Tower of Terror and all of the things that you want to ride. Because I mean, even Tower of Terror sometimes has 2-hour waits. Like, I'm not saying
it's gotten better. That's when they had like the one tower down. I like how that's the ride you pick of all the attractions you could pick. You immediately said you're not going to ride Tower of Terror.
I feel like I'm a newer... If you went back to the very beginning of this podcast, I would tell you that Tower of Terror is not a good ride and you don't have to ride it. And then we rode it like several trips ago. And I literally... It's like one of my favorites because I think it's maybe the only ride in Walt Disney World that I actually find truly terrifying. Like... It gives me gives me that thrill.
You don't know what's going to happen. So.
Like it doesn't hurt my bones to be on it.
Yeah. I just think it's funny of all the attractions that you just immediately jump to that one. But yeah, so there's trade-offs. I think one last thing I want to say here on a 10-day trip or really a long trip, if you're let's say a week plus, is I would schedule one nice meal per day. Now it doesn't have to necessarily be a sit-down table service meal, but plan something nice. Like don't plan that you're going to eat at Cosmic Rays every day or, you know, some quick service walk up. Like when you're there for that long, again, I think the one thing you kind of have to fight and work against is just that I'm eating, you know,
theme park food.
I'm eating theme park food every day. I'm in a theme park with crowds every day. Like just almost the monotony of it, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of crazy. It's like, oh, you're at Disney.
Yeah, like you're complaining about.
How could you? But
that's
like,
not what we mean, though.
But like, you need to change things up, and that's why I think like something like a tour or something like going to the water parks helps. But making sure, you have one kind of nice meal, and you're just not, it's chicken fingers and corn dogs again.
Well, right. And I mean, it depends on your diet, but I know if I'm in the theme park for so many days and I realize that all I've been eating is chicken fingers and churros and Mickey bars, I don't feel good. Like I don't feel well. So I know I have to go. I mean, not even talking about, we've mentioned this place before, but like Backlot over in Hollywood Studios, they have a really nice salad. And like sometimes like that's my reset meal where I'm like, okay, now I've eaten something green and I don't feel like crap anymore. Like I feel okay now to continue on because I've had some sort of fuel that doesn't feel greasy or heavy.
Or you even mentioned like an Instacart, like getting groceries and like making meals. Again, you're there for a long time. You're going to want something again to kind of keep you in like your normal routine, that you were back home. So making meals is a great, option as well. But just to kind of keep that in mind of, again, as you get in these longer trip lengths, just some ways. And again, it's a nice way to save money too if you order groceries and you kind of, make your own meals. But that wraps up the show for today. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone on planning your next trip to Walt Disney World. I want to thank everybody again for listening. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It really helps and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.